The other day, I opened and read it. They said they were suckers.
All right, good morning and welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show. Today is December 22nd. Actually, is it December 22nd? It is. It's Tuesday, December 22nd.
Yes.
We used to do the show on Thursdays, but we did this one on Tuesday because it's Thursday. It's Christmas Eve. So, I'm George Holt, 25 years in law enforcement, worked a variety of assignments, worked narcotics, worked gang suppression, worked dope, K-9, SWAT, all kind of stuff like that, and patrol, of course. I was a supervisor for about 18 out of those 25 years. And to my left here is Kent Lee.
Don't lie.
Yeah, I was. A good supervisor, too. A damn good supervisor.
So my name is Kent. Last initial is K. I worked in a L.A. area police department for about 14 years, and I've known George in that capacity. So I'm here with you today as well. Hello.
Yeah, so he's back. He was gone the last couple of shows. He was in the great state of Arizona, and I had Gil. Gil was here with us, and of course Roger Rod, who came to the stage last week on our show about what was our show about last week? Anyway, all right, that show where we talked about various issues. Yeah, Freddie Gray, the Freddie Gray lack of verdict, the Freddie Gray mistrial. So today we're going to talk about a couple different things, but since Kent's been gone and he's been in another state, I wanted to ask him a couple of questions, just kind of get a feel for it. I used to go to Arizona all the time, but I haven't been to Arizona now. God, in a year probably. No, I went to last April. It was April. Seems like a year. I used to go to Arizona all the time. But Kent's been in Arizona, like immersed in Arizonan culture now for the last couple of weeks. And it's a little different in Arizona. For those of you who don't know, in Arizona, citizens can carry guns. And if you're an Arizona resident, you don't need a permit, right?
No.
And if you're from out of state, you can get a permit fairly easily, right?
If you're from out of state and you're passing through Arizona, you can carry.
Okay, so you don't even need a permit. So you can just roll concealed in Arizona, as long as you can legally own the gun. And it's interesting to me because we talk about, well, if everybody has guns and it's going to be a shoot 'em up and there's going to be all this kind of nonsense, right? I haven't seen any evidence of that. And in fact, I made a bet with somebody that it was going to happen and it didn't. You know, when they first said they first relaxed the carry rules like 4 or 5 years ago. So, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, have you seen anything like that? Any kind of issues?
Well, occasionally they happen, but they're rare. But I think all the evidence was in hand, going all the way back to Florida, who started all this, carrying CCWs, and the amount of
CCW is carry concealed weapon. So we're going to talk in acronyms and jargon, but that's just how we do. So
negligent shootings or misuse of firearms, I think the percentages are quite low.
Well, see, and that was my big thing I was concerned about. I wasn't really concerned about the road rage thing so much. I was more concerned that people would have negligent discharges because, honestly, if it wasn't legal to carry before, most people, when they bought their guns, they didn't buy holsters. Now that it's legal to carry, I'm sure when people buy guns, they're just going to buy a holster now. But what does the average person do that doesn't have a holster? They want to carry a gun. A lady's going to throw it in her purse. A guy's going to stick it in his waistband and just use what we call a fruit of the loom holster. Right? Where it's just you got it stuck down in your underwear inside your belt loop and you're ready to go. And that causes problems. It causes negligent discharges. It causes people to lose control of their guns. I was expecting that to happen, but apparently it hasn't.
It's only cops that do that, George.
I know, huh?
So
seems like it.
Most of the citizens that take the time and are conscientious enough to go get the training, go get the permit, start carrying a gun. It's a big. It's like the first day that we were carrying on the job. It was a very uncomfortable feeling.
Sure, you're very careful about it. You don't take it for granted.
Right. So their attitudes in general are a lot of times above and beyond police officers in terms of how they handle their weapon and their desire to receive training and handle it well.
Yeah, because they don't look at it as work. For
they don't want to lose the privilege either.
Well, that's the other thing. So average police officer takes a privilege for granted. And a lot of police officers look at that kind of thing as work. They don't really find it enjoyable to have to go out on the range and shoot no matter what the weather is and all that. So I see your point about citizens taking that into taking it a little more seriously, at least at first, right? Or again, they don't want to lose the privilege. Well, one of the things that we do on a Ride Along radio show is we talk about our experiences as police officers, and we apply that to things that have happened or are going on in the community, issues that are of mutual concern to both the police and the community. And one of the things I've taken to saying lately was that because we're retired police officers and our checks are assured, we don't have to worry about.
Till we're bankrupt.
Yeah, well, that's another story. Just don't get bankrupt. But, we don't have to worry about anybody coming back on us, any backlash if we make any comments that are politically unpopular or politically incorrect, or we piss anybody off, basically. So I say that nobody's running for office, and we don't have to worry about that.
I always wonder about that because there are a lot of talking heads on television, ex-military generals and the like,
right,
who are receiving pensions. And I always wondered, because the IRS seems to be running around.
Being used for political purposes.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Too bad we can't talk about that too, George. And
well, if this is a show about national politics, we certainly could. But in terms of journalistic integrity, I always wonder about that too. But here's the other thing. A lot of those guys, man, they leave the military, but then they go into private industry, and they're working for defense contractors and all that, or the media.
I always wonder if one day their check doesn't show up, and they make a telephone call and they say, "Where's my check?" And I say, "I'm sorry, sir, but we're doing an audit and we're doing an investigation."
Well, you know what? That's only going to happen a couple of times, and either the word will get out one way or the other. But I haven't heard of it happening yet. But I'm not worried about anybody stopping my pension check.
Okay.
So, and you shouldn't be worried about anybody stopping yours either. So, we're not big enough for anybody to be worried about, right? But we can come here and speak our minds without fear of consequences and repercussions and or punk retribution by the police administration. So, that's one of the things and I've said this before. We were pretty outspoken and therefore wildly unpopular in certain administrative circles because we always spoke our mind, and everybody didn't always want to hear that. And maybe it wasn't our place to speak our mind, but guess what? Now it is. So, so now we get to go in on everybody we want to go in on and talk about things that we want to talk about in our format. So, so this is why I wanted to ask you about the Arizona thing, because it may run counter to what a lot of people are expecting, or what a lot of police officers want to hear.
Well, I think the line officers in California would very much agree and would probably like the political position of Arizona and how they treat firearms. I think it's just the brass in California that seems to have a problem with this. It works great. There's no problem. And it's right next to California.
Right next door.
All the people from California that exit this state and are looking for another place to live, obviously one of their first stops is Arizona. I meet people there all the time, and of course I'm singled out. Of course I'm the only one there usually when we're talking that was actually born in Arizona, and I have to remind them of that. I've just come back to my roots, but it hasn't gotten screwed up yet. But give it time.
One of the things I hear officers saying when Arizona changed this and allowed everybody to carry guns, you had a lot of officers saying, "Well, man, I don't like that because if they do that here, then everybody you stop, maybe they got a gun." I said, "Well, you should assume that everybody's got a gun anyway. What are you doing?"
The criminals are still going to have a gun.
Right. And that's probably because of where we worked.
Right.
We were always very, very careful. But if you're an officer who works in a low crime area, you get complacent. And so my thing is, for survival purposes, you should always make the assumption that everybody probably has a gun anyway. And then if they don't, then it's cool. But this way you don't let your guard down and end up getting killed in a line of duty because you were complacent. So to me, it wouldn't make any difference in terms of how I would do the job today, because I always approach people like that anyway.
Well, and this shooting that we're going to be reviewing, the video of that, you think about when there are incidents on the road or in different places in different states where the right to carry is prevalent, and many people are. The amount of times that citizens come to the rescue of law enforcement, literally rescue, when there's a shooting, I think the law enforcement is glad that they've got essentially an armed militia of citizens, which is exactly what it should be.
That's the thing now, and that can cause issues in the fog of war. Let me give you an example. There used to be a sergeant who worked in Watts. I won't say his name, but any cop who worked in Watts in the late 90s to early 2000s would know this guy. He was a British guy. He used to be a Bobby.
Blonde hair?
Yes, exactly. You know what I'm talking about. Good guy. I liked him a lot. One night I'm in Watts, and I don't even know. I was a supervisor, so I was in the car by myself, and I hear a help call come out, and I hear his call sign in his very crisp British accent asking for help. But I'm thinking, well, I'm on like an 102nd or something, and he's like on 80th or something. So I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get over there in time. Actually, he wasn't. He was like on 88th or something. I was on 115th. Like, well, somebody else will get there. but let me just start rolling that way just in case. So I'm rolling, and apparently something else was happening elsewhere in the division, because about 30 seconds later, he comes back on the air. And so now, okay, let me pick up the pace, although I'm sure by the time I get there, somebody else will be there. I finally get to the location. I'm the first officer on scene. And this sergeant has been fighting with this guy for a couple of minutes now.
Waiting for you.
Waiting for me, apparently. So I get out of my car. We used to carry these little short batons. They're called saps. They were, you carry them in your pants pocket. If you see police officers, those little slit pockets on the back of their pants, that's to carry a little short baton or a flashlight or gloves in. But I carried a little sap baton. So I see the guy, and now there's two guys fighting with this sergeant, okay? And he is rolling around on the ground in this person's front yard. I run up and I'm saying, get off of him, and I'm raising my sap and I'm getting ready to come down on the guy on top of him. And the sergeant looks at me, sees me coming, and he goes, no, he's helping me. And so it turns out that the guy saw the sergeant fighting on the grass, and he comes out to help him. Okay, but none of this was relayed to me. Okay, none of this was said. So all I know is now this sergeant is fighting with two suspects. Man, I'm about to come in and give somebody 9 from the sky, you know, because I can't have that, right? And I'm so glad he said something, because the guy I think he was either Vietnam or Korea era vet, and he was not going to let that policeman be beat up like that without him coming in to help him. And apparently the guy he was stopping was some neighborhood crackhead burglar type, always into stuff. We found this out later. So what I'm saying is, citizens wanting to get involved, you got to be really careful, because you have to make sure that you don't get caught up. Because that man almost got caught up, and I would have been completely justified too, by the way, because based on the information I had, this sergeant's fighting with two people.
Well, and to this day, I've been involved in some things now as a civilian where my adage is, I actually tell the cops after it's over, is I'm always very careful when I come around you guys, because being next to a cop, I could get shot at any minute. Okay, it can happen. I just say that. You don't know what's going to happen, especially when things are going downhill fast.
Now, you mean, okay, shot by the cop or shot by someone shooting at the cop?
Who knows?
Who knows, right? Either way.
Who knows?
Well, you know what? And
it goes both ways. And I don't, this is not going to be some big epidemic, because just because we're talking about this and you think of this in relation to California and what you know and how things are now, there's anecdotal evidence out there for you to get a hold of to say this isn't really a problem. By the way, this is how it's supposed to be.
Oh, I'm just going on my personal
experience. We are responsible ultimately for our own safety,
sure.
not the police.
Well, you know what? The government's role, to me, has historically been to protect people from force and fraud, right? And of course, we've gotten into other things because the system of government's expanded, and we need to support those things. But historically, the government's job is to protect people from force and fraud. But the police are part of that force and fraud protection.
Sure, they are.
Okay, so yes, your own. Just like you can't smoke 6 packs of cigarettes a day and drink 8 6-packs and then go to the doctor and wonder why you're unhealthy. It's your health is your responsibility, and the doctor helps you with that, and the doctor treats that, and the doctor can give you some preventative things, and maybe we can pass some legislation to get some of this pollution out of the air as preventative measure. But your individual health is your responsibility. And I say the same thing about your protection, your own safety. That is your individual responsibility. And even if you think it isn't, it still is. So you're still on the hook for it.
Yeah, well, and one of the things I used to push, and even in the projects, was you need to arm yourself. By the way, when I show up, I expect, if I don't get there for a few minutes, that you've resolved the problem. Okay, and when I
depends on what the problem is.
Well, and I get there, we'll figure it out. But I know one thing that won't happen. I know who the criminal is, and I know who the good guy is. And if somebody's had to use force to protect themselves or another person, and it didn't go quite right, I'll throw them a bone.
And that's happened,
right?
That's happened
all the time.
Yeah, sure, that's happened. I remember one time again in Watts, fist fight in the middle of the street. I get there, and my two of my young officers have detained both combatants. And I roll up, and one is a guy who I know is an upstanding citizen who actually has a plumbing business, and he employs some of the young guys from the projects who work in his plumbing business. And the other one is a notorious crackhead, okay, who likes to fight with the police. And I could tell you both their names right now, but I won't. Well, automatically, man, and maybe I'm wrong, but automatically I just know, based on my long interaction with this guy and my long interaction with that guy, what probably happened before anybody even says anything.
Sure.
And it turns out he caught the guy stealing out the back of his truck, and then the fight started up,
And
right?
if there was an extra rat-a-tat-tat on the guy's head and he was bleeding,
So, and that's exactly what happened.
that's the way it is.
Well, that's exactly what happened. And my officer's like, well, hey, he's bleeding from because the guy, he was bleeding across his nose. And now, of course, he wants to fight now that we're there, right? Now you want to fight back. And I'm like, no, and this is where community-based policing comes into play. That's the importance of knowing your area, of knowing your community, of knowing the players, knowing, who's who in the zoo, as we say, right? Because then I know his history, I know his history. I know what he's doing over here, I know what he's doing over here. And unfortunately, even if that guy had been, just for whatever second, the polls had been reversed, and now my good guy, my historically good guy, is really the bad guy in this, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise, just because I know the area and I know those two people.
And you know what most people don't also know, it's a bit of a shift of what you're talking about is, and you've probably experienced this on both ends, calling the cops and the cops show up at your house.
Right.
And they find out that you used to be a police officer.
Right.
They're automatically scrutinizing you.
Well, you think so?
Oh, yeah.
And scrutiny in terms of what?
I've seen that.
Scrutiny in terms of what?
You're telling a story. They're looking at you, wondering if you're telling the real story or
telling the story that they need to hear.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, if you're telling the story
absolutely.
or you're telling the story that they need to hear.
Well, and they're
Sure.
and they're spending a lot of time scrutinizing you too. And if, for the people that are listening to this, I suppose as much as there is a little favoritism at times when the cops show up and it's a cop that's involved in something, that cuts both ways.
It sure does.
You have no idea what's going to happen when the cops show up. I always say this about everything.
Well, as we always say, the person who calls 911 first is the victim, right? Until
They would like to
until
think
proven
so.
otherwise, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we're going to jump into our news of the day, and then we'll get into our topic of the day, which is the Noel Aguilar shooting by LA County Sheriff's deputies in Long Beach, California. Be right back. All right, welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show. Welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show after that break. Hey, if you have anything you'd like to talk about, or you want to talk about something we've been talking about, or any of the topics we're about to cover, you can call us at 323-293-3375, or you can send us a tweet at Ride Along Radio. So we always get into the news of the day, and usually we do it earlier before the break, but this is cool. It'll work out better today this way anyway. So yesterday, grand jury in Texas convened, and they came back with no indictment on the Sandra Bland situation. Those of you may remember that she was a woman from Chicago, and she was pulled over in July of this year by a Texas state trooper for making an improper lane change. There was a dash cam video, showed an interaction. It kind of got a little confrontational, and then it got physical, and she was charged with assault. She was jailed and taken to the county jail in Hempstead, Texas, and which is about 50 miles outside Houston, I guess, outside Houston, Texas. She was booked in, and I think it was 3 days later. Yeah, 3 days later, she was found hanging in her jail cell, and they said that she had committed suicide. There was a huge uproar on social media behind this. She was one of the first Black Lives Matter subjects, the subject of the hashtag, and it really started picking up steam because people said, hey, why would she kill herself? If you look at her life and then where she was on her way to, this is not someone who would kill themselves. And so a lot of people began to suspect a cover-up. And there was a lot of what I consider to be social media hysteria, I like to call it that, because there was these conspiracy theories that even in the mugshot, she was already dead. And like they would prop a dead woman up and open her eyes and put her in the jail clothes and take a picture and all the rest of that stuff. So that was refuted. But I hate that kind of stuff because it undermines the credibility of anything you might say later that's real, when we come up with this kind of hysteria. So anyway, there was enough pressure to go to the Senate to a grand jury, and there were no one was charged. And the grand jury convened. They're going to come back in January, and then they'll decide if the initial Texas state trooper who stopped her should be facing charges. If you look at it, if you look at the initial video confrontation, I'm sure most of you have seen it, there are some things he could have done differently, certainly. However, had she not died in police custody, this wouldn't even be a big deal. But now, since the result is she has died as a result, indirect, way down the chain, result of that arrest, now they're looking at his actions a little bit more.
Well, and there could have been a lot of things that she did differently.
Oh, hold on. I'm glad you said that, okay? Let's go back to the common factor. And again, I'm going to start with the disclaimer. It doesn't mean that you are automatically to be killed by the police if you don't comply. But everything from this situation to Freddie Gray to Eric Garner to, how many other situations? The one where we had the, it just happened earlier this year. Zero compliance is where I'm going with this. Even on the website of the American Civil Liberties Union, who is actually an organization that is not, I'm not going to say they're anti-police, but they're certainly not pro-police. They tell you the first thing is do not fight, do not resist. Comply now, complain later. All this stuff you see go down, I'm going to say that out of all the controversy, except for Tamir Rice, because Tamir Rice wasn't being non-compliant. Tamir Rice, if anything, was trying to comply with the officer's order, which is a bad combination of things that happened, and he was killed. But 90% of these shootings we talk about, 90% of the people who end up dead at the hands of the police or while in police custody, we have seen it starts off with zero compliance. It is your duty as a citizen to comply with a lawful order given by a police officer. And guess what? It's not even your place to decide right then and there if it's a lawful order. Even if you think it's an unlawful order, you're supposed to comply. Because if you don't comply, then you're subject to arrest. If you resist, you're subject to violence and use of force to overcome your resistance. And it's not going to end well for you. I don't know why people don't understand that. Comply now, complain later.
And that rule, by the way, was based on a ruling in the Supreme Court. And it was decided a long time ago. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be that you could use force with the police entering your house without a warrant, et cetera, to defend your premise. But that was decided a long time ago. It was probably decided back in the late 1800s or sometime in the late 1800s,
oh, wow.
Early 1900s.
I was wondering when that was you were talking about. That's why I don't remember it. Okay, I ain't that old.
This is trial by fire. Obviously, you start off here, which even our Constitution was. The first Articles of Confederation never worked. They had to come up with a Constitution because there wasn't enough government. They were trying to find the happy balance. Same with this. So I think it was a state recently made a decision on this. It may have been Texas. It may have been New Mexico. I can't remember the state. That if the cops come into your house without a warrant and you're standing there, you have to let them in. You have to let them in.
Well, here's the thing, though. You don't know if they have a warrant or they're operating under exigent circumstances or whatever else. There's other things beside a warrant. Police can enter your house under exigent circumstances without a warrant, by the way. So it's not up to you to play like to be the Supreme Court right there on your front porch and decide whether or not this is lawful. Your duty is to comply, and then we sort that out later with the real Supreme Court.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's just that, man. But we have people who want to fight. Here's what I try to tell people. And people might have got mad when Roger said it last week, but especially in the black community, it's just the truth. When you look at these situations, we usually start off with zero compliance. The system is not set up to allow you to decide whether you think something is right or wrong right there on the street. You will get your day in court, but that day will be in court. On the sidewalk, on the street, in that alley, in somebody's backyard at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to win. It's not set up for you to win.
And here's another good reason. A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, on a rare case, from time to time, I can think of a couple of federal agencies that are probably notorious for this. They go do a search warrant and they go to the wrong house.
Right, exactly.
And they're expecting drugs and guns and maybe gang members. They go to the wrong house and they kick the door down. Now, you just happen to be the homeowner and the occupant of the wrong home when the door goes kaboom, and you're trying to defend yourself against this,
whatever it is.
Sometimes you don't even know it's the cops that are booting your door down, that the door comes off the hinges, and you have, 10 cops storming into the place in riot gear yelling, police, police, and half the time you may not even be able to hear one saying police because they're all screaming their guts out while they're running through there with all the excitement.
And typically we give knock and notice.
Well,
but not always. You don't always have to.
The knock and notice, even when they're trying to do it according to the law, we know that it gets a little short. Okay?
Yeah,
It's boom,
certainly.
boom, boom, and I stand out of the way, and there goes the
battering ram
ram,
comes
and your
in,
door
yeah.
goes off the hinges. Okay?
sure.
So the best thing to do is, is to not pick up your gun, is not to challenge who's coming through the door. Not that there haven't been people who have booted doors in inner city neighborhoods dressed like cops,
Right.
to gain entrance to come get
But
your
that's not
stuff.
going to be a defense if you shoot
No.
an actual cop and you say, well, this happened before.
Well, there have been
you know.
some defenses, and this is lately. Now, I said that was a state decision, okay?
Okay.
There have been some decisions where cops have come to the wrong house and have booted the door, and are in the process of using force, and a homeowner has pulled out their gun, and it's been in the middle of the night, and they don't know who's coming in, and there's been shots that have been fired.
Right.
And they have backed up the homeowner, the property
Okay,
owner.
and that person lived through that, obviously.
Obviously.
Because if they didn't live through it,
Right.
nobody's going to fault the cops for that.
Right.
Because let me tell you something, that police officer, there's different jobs within a SWAT element, or somebody's going to do a raid on your house. Somebody's job is to scout your house out.
Right.
And if the scout sends a team to the wrong location, the other people on that team, they don't know they're at the wrong location. They're acting in good faith when they come through that door.
Right.
So if you start shooting at them, all they know is we're here to serve a warrant on somebody making meth, and you're inside shooting at me from inside the meth house, and they're going to respond accordingly. So that's a tough situation for people to be in, which is why it's incumbent upon that point man, upon that scout, to make sure they have the right location. When you write a search warrant, you have to actually write a pretty nice description of the location you want to hit.
And so that we're not contradicting ourselves. We're not saying that cops can come in, boot your door, and start kicking your ass all over the place and acting unlawfully. Okay? We're talking about them legitimately doing their job and following rules, guidelines, and everything else.
Especially when you know that you've done something. Okay? Especially if you know that you got a gun in your waistband. Especially if you know that you're wanted. Especially if you know you've been slinging out dope out of your house for the last 6 months. You knew this day was coming. So people shouldn't be surprised. But even if you know that you haven't done anything wrong, say I leave here today and I know I haven't done anything wrong at all, and I get 3 police cars to pull me over and they order me out at gunpoint. Well, I haven't done anything. I've been here for the last hour. You guys who are watching will know that I've been here for the last hour. But it doesn't mean that somebody who matches my description didn't say, hey, this guy just did this, or somebody, for whatever reason, putting that on me and saying, oh, this guy just did this, and give up my description and license plate and everything. So it's a situation where you don't know what the police are stopping you for. And at the time, we'll handcuff you, and we always used to say handcuffs come off too. So we'll dust you off and send you on your way, and we'll explain to you what happened. And I think police officers always owe people an explanation as to why they did what they did. But that's later. That ain't before the handcuffs go on. I'm not explaining anything then. Later on, when we dust you off and stand you up, then you'll get the
Are
explanation.
you talking about booting a door?
I'm talking about booting a door, pulling somebody over in a car, anything like that.
I don't agree with
any
that.
of that.
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with what?
I think when you contact somebody, you need to tell them exactly why they're being stopped.
I'm not going to go through all that with you before I establish control of the situation.
Well, it could be a traffic stop, and you can explain, do you know why I stopped you?
That's different, though. That's different than somebody being confrontational.
Or stop right there. I pull my gun out, and I want you to stop right there. And,
Yeah, I'm
and
not
they're
going-
saying,
yeah.
what's the problem?
No.
That's the problem.
Nope.
The problem is
Nope.
we think you've been involved in a robbery, and you fit the
Nope.
description, so get on the
I'm
ground.
not doing all that with my gun in my hand. You get on the ground, then I'll talk to you. Because I'm not about to sit there and have a board meeting
You don't need
on the
to.
sidewalk with my gun in my hand.
If you can pull your gun and give them an order to get down on the ground, you can also say, get down on the ground because we believe you've been involved in a robbery.
And then what's the guy
going
to say? What's the guy going to say?
I'm not. Okay, we'll discuss that
I'm
later.
not,
But
and
at
I'm not
least-
doing it.
Well, but
Or
you
I
at least
am,
give
and I
it
already
time.
knew why you stopped me. I'm just
yeah,
asking
but
you.
You've done your job to say that I'm telling him exactly why I've
Nope,
stopped
I will
him.
give you an explanation. I will sit there with you and answer all your questions after.
You're going to find yourself on the
After.
short end of the stick.
Never happened. 25 years, it didn't happen.
Well, that's because
Never found myself on the short end of the stick because of that. So listen. So we're going to slide into our news of the day because Kent is surreptitiously tapping his watch here. Our news of the day segment is a Noel Aguilar shooting, and some of you may have heard or be aware of that. It's all over the news. It actually happened a year ago. It happened in 2014, but recently cell phone video footage surfaced, and now people are saying, "Hey, this is showing something that we didn't know before. We want the district attorney's office to open up the case and look at this, what the officers did." And some people are calling it murder. They're saying the man was executed. And we actually have a short video. I'll give you a quick intro before we get into the video. two LA County deputies riding a patrol car. They see Mr. Aguilar riding his bicycle down the street while wearing headphones. That's against the California Vehicle Code. It's probably illegal in your home state, too. They go to contact him. He takes off running and actually tries to get away on the bike first. Then they go on a foot chase, end up catching up with him, and a struggle ensues. During the course of that, they retrieve a gun from him. One of the deputies is shot. Now, to me, I thought that the deputy, when he picked the suspect's gun up, he secured it by putting it in his waistband. That's a bad look, but he had to do what he had to do at the time, okay? So he puts it in his waistband. I was under the impression that that gun had gone off during the struggle because he continued to struggle. However, it's being said that the other deputy, during the struggle, discharged a round, shot the first deputy.
It may not be
accident.
apparent when you're watching it.
It may not be apparent when you're watching it. But if the deputy had his gun in his hand, he had his finger on the trigger, and you're trying to fight with somebody, that could happen. And we'll get into sympathetic squeeze response and all that after we watch the video. Are we ready with the video, man?
You've got terms for all this, don't you?
So we're going to watch the video. Yeah, that's what I do for a living.
Wow.
New video evidence raises questions about fatal police shooting in Long Beach. More than a year after the death of Noel Aguilar, video obtained by the law firm of Guizar, Henderson, and Carrasco shows two officers shooting him dead from the back when he is on the ground.
It's a gun, it's a gun, it's a gun. You fucking move, I'm gonna kill you, bitch.
The law firm, which represents Aguilar's fiancée and mother, released the footage on Friday. The incident happened on May 26, 2014. Two Los Angeles County deputies tried to pull over Noel Aguilar for riding a bicycle while wearing headphones in Long Beach. The 23-year-old allegedly fled, first on his bike, then on foot. The deputies chased him and caught up with him in a driveway next to an apartment complex. They pushed him to the ground, took his gun, and tried to handcuff him. Aguilar resisted. During the ensuing struggle, one of the deputies, Albert Murad, fired his gun and accidentally hit his partner. The partner, Jose Ruiz, did not seem to realize it was Murad who fired his gun. Aguilar can be heard saying, "I didn't shoot nobody," to no avail. Murad fired a second shot, and Ruiz, who was bleeding from his stomach, fired 3 rapid shots in Aguilar's back, killing him. In the video, Aguilar can be heard saying, "I'm dying." Attorneys for Aguilar's family say the video was shot by a bystander who recently sent it to them anonymously. The attorneys gave the recording to both the district attorney and the FBI. They are demanding that the case be reopened and the deputies be criminally prosecuted.
All right. So now you've seen the quick synopsis of the video. And, of course, the whole video itself is like 8 minutes long. If you want to see the whole thing, I recommend you go to YouTube.
Which
and
you
search.
should.
Yeah, which you should, by the way. Before you render any opinion on this, you should go to YouTube and just search for the name Noel Aguilar. That's Aguilar, and Noel is like Noel, like Noel, right? So you'll see that, and you should watch the whole thing and try to ignore some of the spin that's put on it by some of the titling. Some of the titling says he was executed, he was murdered, and cops covered this up, et cetera, et cetera. After having watched this video several times,
Which you have to do. It's
what you have to do,
complicated.
you got to watch it and stop it and look at it, and don't just go on what they're trying to, what some people are trying to spin this as. From either direction, by the way. Form your own opinion. But I'm going to tell you, we'll tell you what we saw based on our perspective and based on us having been in those kind of situations before. And when you look at it, you be aware of there's this thing called perspective bias, where if you're looking for this to be a murder execution, that's what you're going to find. If you're looking for this to be a righteous use of force, that's what you're going to find. So just be aware of where you're coming from and try to look at it objectively. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh my God, that looks pretty bad. And then as I played it again and I really looked at it, and if you go look up some of the explanations that they gave for some of the things that they did, keep in mind they gave these explanations not even knowing this video existed. It will kind of help you see what's going on from their perspective. Because keep in mind that video is taken from about 20 feet away probably.
It's hard to tell.
Well, yeah. So, but you can see everybody's entire body. Three grown men, and you can see their whole body. So it ain't real close.
One deputy is talking to the female who's videoing that.
Yes.
So she had to be close enough for him to see her.
He see that she was there. Okay. And I want you to keep in mind when you watch this, that you are able to watch the whole thing and see what everybody is doing. You can see all three people. Those two deputies, when they're fighting, they're in close. They're probably a foot away from all of this stuff, right? Where they're fighting.
No, they're touching.
I'm saying, but they're like there, like
Yeah.
so they're there, and you can't see.
Right.
You can't see yourself when you're doing something, so you can't see everything that's going on. They got tunnel vision.
And what you can see in the video is not what the deputies can see.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can't see what they can see because their bodies are blocking some of it. They're in so close, so vice versa. They can't see everything you can see, and you can't see everything
They've
they
got
can
the
see.
suspects in between them. They
Yes.
can't see what's happening on either side of them with the struggle. It's a very complicated video. I watched it twice before I even spoke to you, and I said, I'm not even sure what I just saw.
Right,
I'm
exactly.
not-
That's why I told you, hey, watch it again and look for this and look for
Right.
that. You
Because
know,
there were arrows pointing at
this and that,
this
saying
gun
that's what
on
that
the
is.
right side. And I said, well, how do they know that's the gun that belongs to the deputy?
How come they never pointed at the gun that the suspect had? You see what I'm saying?
It was
That's
hard
what-
for me to even see that
But you
because
can see
it's
it if
there
you
one
watch
moment
it.
and not the next. I'm
Right.
confused about that.
So exactly. So let's start off with that. With the first thing, zero compliance. Okay, he was contacted. He took off running. Now there's some reports saying that he was a known gang member, but then there's some media source did a background and said he had no criminal history.
What did that mean? Okay, let's
All that
stop
means
right
he hasn't
there.
been arrested yet,
No,
right?
That's exactly what it means. Doesn't
That's what
mean
it
he's
means.
not from the neighborhood. Is not part of the gang.
Yeah, it doesn't mean he hasn't been arrested yet.
That's exactly right.
Toxicology reports showed that he had meth in his system. And these things are significant because they would impact your judgment and make you more.
Well, and they
jittery.
would also impact the officer's perspective on the suspect because he could have been displaying erratic
Signs and
behavior,
symptoms, sure.
crazy behavior,
Erratic behavior.
and the
Right.
way he was fighting.
So,
Goodness sakes.
right, and that maybe is what influenced his decision to run. You know, his judgment wasn't what it should have been, and the fact that he knew he had a gun.
That could have been.
Okay, that's probably a big part of it, right? So, if you watch the video, you'll see that one of the deputies is striking at the suspect's hand. He's trying to dislodge a gun the suspect has in his hand. And I told people this yesterday when I first saw it, not when I first saw it, after I watched it about 5 times. I said, if they were just looking to kill him, they could have shot him right then and there because he's got a gun in his hand. He's fighting with them, and he doesn't want to drop the gun.
I couldn't see the gun in his hand. I could see clearly that he was using his asp to beat this guy's hand, but I couldn't see it. But why else would he be beating his hand like this?
Right. What good does that do if the gun's not in his hand?
Oh, absolutely no
Yeah.
good. So
Yeah, so then he takes the gun, he retrieves the gun and puts it in his waistband, the deputy does, for safekeeping to keep it away from the suspect, okay? And that's something that you may do in training, but the problem with that, to me, is that you don't know what condition that gun is in, et cetera, et
And
cetera.
one of the deputies, I believe it was the deputy on the right, who was on top of him, said, he's got a gun.
Right.
And that's when he said, if you move...
Right, so let's talk about that, the use of profanity.
Bitch, I'll-
Right, I think he said, if you fucking move, I'll kill you, bitch, I think is what
Yeah,
the quotes
right,
were,
right,
okay?
right.
And people were taken aback by that. I'm seeing all this.
Who
you know,
was?
a lot of social
The
media
the
experts.
viewers?
You know what? I didn't know that so many people had been to the police academy and have so much police experience. I didn't know that so many people were use of force experts. I didn't know that.
And of course, now, that is language that is going to be very common for the person that they're wrestling the gun away from.
Right,
and
but
the surrounding area.
right, the comments are
Right.
saying that's not what a professional police officer says. That's what a gangbanger would say. Well,
then
who are you talking to?
You don't know what you're talking about if that's what you're saying.
Right, exactly, because who are you talking to?
Right.
And honestly, and I said this on previous shows, if me using some harsh language is going to get your attention and convey to you that I'm very deadly serious, I'd rather do that than put a bullet in you. I'd rather say a few bad words at you than have to put some bullets in you. And I think you'd rather that too, right? So it's a level of force that can be used.
I was waiting for the guy to go to his safe space after the officer said that to him. Stop everything right now and go to your safe space.
Well,
And we'll
okay.
reconvene after you feel better.
Well, see, that's the other thing. So now let's talk about the racial component was brought up. That, oh, well, you know, because for whatever reason, people thought the suspect was black for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Does bitch designate his
No,
his race?
It doesn't at all. But not that it should even make a difference. But all three people involved in this, both deputies and the suspect were Latino.
That makes them all Caucasian, by the way.
For the
Or are we
census,
getting
right?
into political terms here?
We're just talking about what people say on the streets.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. White
so
boy?
that means that there was no. I don't know that you could say he had been racially profiled, maybe criminally profiled, because if he's riding, we all know every neighborhood has got their version of Debo, right? The guy who rides around with the long white shirt and the high white socks and the long shorts on the beach cruiser bicycle.
With his tall handlebars.
Okay, with the tall handlebars, right. Okay. So, yeah, maybe he was criminally profiled. Maybe these deputies had prior contact with him. But it doesn't matter because he was wearing headphones while he was operating a bicycle, which is illegal. So that's probable cause for the stop. So they get in there, they contact him. He takes off running with the gun. He might have been trying to ditch the gun. He might have been trying to turn around and shoot them with the gun. I don't know. But the gun is in his possession, and they get it out of his possession. I'll say it again. If they were just looking for an excuse to kill this man, they could have done that when he had the gun in his hand. They could have done that instead of beating the gun out of his hand, instead of trying to dislodge the gun from his hand. If they wanted to kill him, they could have just killed him.
It's hard to believe that we're even including what you just said in this conversation.
You have to.
Why?
You have to, because everybody talks about that, and they want to use it as a motivation. So I want to dispel that before it even gets started. So you have to talk about that.
I'm disappointed.
Well, you see, just be disappointed in our society because that's part of the dialogue always, and really that's just that's because of past patterns and practice, and we're still living with that today, trying to talk about that. It's still echoing. Let's put it like that. The echoes are still reverberating through the hallways of our society. Okay, so people are conscious of that, and that's good because there was a time people weren't conscious of it at all, and they went on way too much. So, okay, so now we talked about that.
By the way?
I'm sorry.
Was that when you were working?
Oh yeah.
Or was it before that?
Before that and still.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
All right, just wondering.
All right. So now, deputy ends up getting shot. Now they're saying, and again, to me, it appeared that the gun in the deputy's waistband is what went off and shot him. But apparently, report is saying that one deputy shot the other deputy.
What report did they get that from? Do you remember?
The official sheriff report.
Okay.
He said that the deputy. Now, in the video, the graphic was wrong because they had the positions kind of out of place. If you look at the video and you look at the graphic we just showed you, the positions weren't entirely accurate. They had them kind of reversed.
It makes a world of difference. That's why you have to watch the entire video.
So you guys watch the whole 8-minute video. So, all right. So one deputy had his gun in his hand. There's this phenomenon. Those of us who are in firearms training understand this. It's called sympathetic squeeze response. So it says that if I'm holding my phone in my hand and I go to turn that doorknob over there, I'm applying a little bit of pressure here on my phone, whether I realize it or not. If I start falling out of my chair and I go to grab this mic stand, I'm going to squeeze it. I'm going to squeeze my phone a little bit too. It's just sympathetic limb interaction. It's what it's called. It's a physiological thing. Those of you in the medical field, look that up and enlighten others. So when you're fighting with somebody, you got your gun in your hand. That's why we tell people keep your finger off the trigger. It is entirely likely that he's got his gun in his hand, finger on or near the trigger. He's wrestling with the suspect, and he experiences sympathetic limb interaction, caused him to negligently discharge that pistol. I'm not saying accidentally. I'm saying negligently because...
Did that happen?
This is what it appears to me. Why else would he shoot his partner? You know what I mean?
Well, it could have been because of the struggle, is what we're talking about.
So do you think he meant to shoot the suspect because the suspect had a gun?
I'll tell you, I would have to go back and look at it over and over. I don't know if I can actually garner that from the video. He may have tried to shoot the suspect. It may have been.
So he was close enough for a contact shot.
The suspect, well, he was, but that may not have been at the point when he decided to pull the trigger, because you notice the suspect starts contorting his body. He found a moment where he could try to wrestle out.
Right, and he actually had his arm on the fence at one point, trying to come to a standing position. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
And you'll see that too as you watch this. I want you to keep in mind when you watch that video that the suspect is fighting the entire time. Even after he's shot, he continues to fight.
And then,
zero compliance.
And then when the deputy on the right took what was a purposeful shot, and it looked like his gun got entangled with the suspect. It looked like he had a flashlight.
The suspect had his hand on the deputy's gun.
That's right, and he pulled that gun away and shoved it back into the suspect's body and then pulled the trigger. So
and then the other deputy, knowing he's been shot, not realizing his partner is the one who shot him apparently.
Yes, and that
he's thinking the suspect's got another gun. He shot me, so he's like, "Hey, I've been shot. I'm starting to get
absolutely.
I'm bleeding out here.
He's fading. He's struggling.
I'm fading.
He's in terrible pain. It's a gut shot.
Yeah,
and he's trying to hang on. And it looks like he's trying to make a decision about whether he's going to be in this or out of this.
Right.
But you know that his partner's fighting.
And now if I go out, my partner's now got to fight this guy by himself, and we'll both end up dead.
That's exactly right. And that's why he decided that it was time. Himself, he pulled out the gun and decided to...
I'm going to end this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's exactly what he did.
And anybody out there who says you wouldn't have done the same thing in a fight for your life, you've been shot, and your thinking is the person we're struggling with has shot me, you're going to do what you got to do to put an end to that. And you know you would. And if you say that you wouldn't, then you're not telling the truth.
Do you notice,
or you have zero survival instinct, one of the two.
Do you notice that it doesn't have to be? And I had to think back about this, about did I announce to my partners around me that, hold on a second, let me tell this guy that I'm getting ready to shoot him if he doesn't stop what he's doing? There was nothing said when those deputies pulled their guns out.
No, they don't have to, no. We're beyond that.
They
now.
were acting separately from each other on each side of the suspect, making individual decisions
because they couldn't see everything. Neither one of them could see the whole big picture.
That's right.
Again, when you watch this video, keep in mind you're standing way back. Your perspective is way back here, and you can see everything. Those deputies are so close in, they can't see everything. Neither deputy could see both his left hand and his right hand at the same time. Now, with that, we're going to take a break. Please do call in, though, because there's probably some people out there smashing their computer keyboards. But call in 323-293-3375, or you can send us a tweet at Ride Along Radio. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. All right, so welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show. We're discussing the Noel Aguilar shooting by L.A. County deputy sheriffs in Long Beach, California. So the thing, it's all over social media right now. I'm George Holt.
I'm Kent K.
And so we're here to lend our perspective as law enforcement officers to what we see. And again, anybody who's been watching this show for a while will tell you that we're not afraid to criticize the actions of the police as needed. Now, are we going to lean that way anyway? Hey, that's our perspective bias. That's what we did for such a long time. But there are times when the police are wrong. To me, this wasn't one of them. Okay? This is a situation where the officers were acting in good faith, subject exhibited zero compliance, and he did things that clearly contributed to his own demise. Now, he didn't shoot anybody, okay? However, he continued to fight even when the first shot went off that didn't even hit him, by the way. It hit the other officer. Man, you got a freebie. At that time, you're supposed to stop because now bullets are being fired by the police, and you haven't been shot yet. It's time for you to stop what you're doing.
Okay, so you notice that when that happened that Aguilar said, I didn't shoot nobody.
That's what he said, yeah.
And you know that he knew he was in deep doo-doo now.
Right, because now he's thinking, I'm going to get blamed for this.
No, he's going to get shot.
Well, that happened too.
Right, and he's been schooled since he was probably 12 or 13 years old running with the gangs in the neighborhood and stuff. So he knew exactly what was about to go down. And he was trying to speak up in his defense. Wrong time to be speaking up when everybody's struggling for their life, Right,
and at that point, he probably wished he had just stopped and let them catch him with a gun.
And by the way, if you'll also notice, when he's saying, I didn't shoot nobody, his struggle doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't, and that's the thing.
It's continual.
Right, and so people are saying, well, after they shot him, why are they kneeling on him? It's like, people even said, it's like they're trying to press the blood out of him to make sure that he dies.
Let him breathe.
Here's the thing. He continues to fight.
Right.
He is continuing to fight. Now, we have a deputy shot. He's bleeding over here. His partner is on top of this combative suspect. The partner probably needs to rest at this point, too. He's laying on top of the suspect using his body weight while they're trying to get some help there. They didn't know where they were, and I was wondering, why would you stop him and not put out your location? Whenever the police stop you, they let everybody know where you are, but it was the end of a pursuit.
That's right.
So they were no longer where they initially contacted him.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened there. That explains why they didn't exactly know where they were and had to ask people
That's not uncommon.
for the address. Now, and that is right, it's not uncommon. You end up and not know where you are and have to ask somebody. However, those same people that were videotaping this and were making all the exclamations when the police shot him, none of those people came down there to try to talk to that man and try to talk some sense into him. Nobody came down there to try to help the police take him into custody safely. Nobody did any of that.
No,
so they stood back.
They were feeding it and actually were becoming a threat because they were obviously hostile.
Well, they became hostile after he was shot, certainly.
Right, and they were in a bad predicament. And I'm sure that fed into the two deputies' decisions about what they were going to do when they did it.
Right, because we're going to keep fighting with this dude.
Right.
And now he's got a crowd gathering or people in this area coming on out. We're going to end this, and we're going to end this quickly before it spirals out of control.
Right.
You got to understand when you're out there, we're playing for keeps, okay? And there's not a lot of do-overs. It's not a lot of, well, we'll let that one go. It's life or death. And you could tell, if you listen to that when that deputy got shot, you could tell with the way the deputy was scared. He was starting to panic a little bit, and I don't blame him. He's been shot in the line of duty fighting with a gang member, and he's thinking, "Man, I've been shot." He goes,
and he's bleeding.
I couldn't believe he's bleeding.
The pain.
He's in pain. Everything else. Hey, kudos to him because he kept fighting.
Right.
Even after he was initially shot, he kept fighting long enough to help his partner, and his partner finally tells him, "Hey, man, go sit down."
If he would have only smoked some meth before the fight started,
yeah,
like
he
the
could have
suspect,
fought
he would
too.
have been in it. Yeah,
he could have fought too, right?
Right.
But he's out there, and let me say this too. These deputies didn't start their shift saying, "Let's go find Noel Aguilar and kill him." They're out there doing their job. They contact him because he's violating the vehicle code. Now, maybe you say, "Well, that's a ticky-tack violation." Yeah, okay. It's not the great train robbery, but it's still a legal and legitimate reason to contact him.
It's an introduction to other things that they know is amiss.
And so now we can talk to him, and it turns out, guess what? They were right. He had a gun. He takes off running. Again, I want people to start putting the onus back on these people who are committing these crimes. Now, everybody isn't committing a crime when this happens, but usually they are. And usually it's non-compliance, and then it goes downhill from there. That does not mean the police have a license to beat you and kill you for no reason at all. It means that if you see there's a pattern here, just like when you go into the mall at Christmas time, you don't leave your purse on your front seat of your car, right? Because what could happen? You could fall victim to something. So even if you were totally anti-police, you think all police are criminals, why would you put yourself in a position to fall victim to something like that? You are supposed to, I'll say it again, comply. These situations almost always start off with zero compliance. If you start off failing to comply, you're already in the wrong, because if you hadn't done anything wrong before, now you've done something wrong. You're violating the law by not complying.
I remember there was a time very early in my career that I found myself, and there were four of us, found ourselves in the middle of a tremendous fight with a guy that just gotten out of prison. They called him Little Man, and he was wearing no shirt. He was like he was on steroids. The guy was buffed out, and the dude was struggling. He didn't want to go to jail. I had a bottle of PCP we found on him. And he tried to take my partner's gun, bent the holster. All the time that I was going to town on him with my sap, trying to get him under control, and another officer got him around the neck and went down. He was trying to choke the suspect out, and the entire time the suspect was grabbing his holster, and he had one of those spinning holsters, clamshell holsters that LAPD used to have. Crappy holster, we all thought, but thank God it worked. And I went down on my knees on top of both the suspect and the officer, and I took my gun out and I stuck it down between my legs, and I'm getting ready to blow this guy's heart out. And it dawned on me that my partner didn't wear a vest.
Oh, and he's under the guy.
Yeah. And it really caused a tremendous problem because I had to put my gun away and come back out and take other action to put his lights out. But it was a very, very, very bad situation, and we were completely surrounded, and we were having bottles thrown at us at the same time.
Right, and
so
nobody's trying to help him. Nobody's trying to help you at all.
A difficult situation to be in. And again, if people weren't committing crimes, if they weren't trying to attack the police, no matter what you think, the cops are not on their heels. They may be on their heels in terms of activity, but when it comes down and it's time to use force, and they're going to have to use force, they're going to go home if they can. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Plain and simple. They're not going to roll over and die in the process because of the politics that are going on right now.
Even if it means going home without a job.
Right.
We're going home. Okay. Nobody comes to work to be killed, and everybody needs to understand that. I just don't understand. I understand people are sick of it. I understand there was a lot of abuse for a long time. Okay. And I understand that it's starting to mount, but when we take incidents and we automatically jump on the side of the criminal who didn't have that gun because he wasn't looking for ISIS, by the way. He had that gun because he was going to victimize somebody, maybe one of you, because he certainly wasn't going to victimize either one of us. So, he's going to victimize somebody, and then we defend people like that. When the deputies go to contact him as part of their job, which is completely legal for them to do, is what they're supposed to be doing. And let me go a step further. If they hadn't stopped that dude, ambulance comes through with the sirens. He doesn't hear because he's got headphones on. He gets hit by a car. Somebody says, well, he rode right by the deputies with the headphones on and they didn't stop him. Isn't that illegal? So he's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But whatever. I really don't care about that kind of criticism because part of the law enforcement code of ethics asks if you can stand fast in the face of danger, scorn, and ridicule, right? And, whatever. This is the scorn and ridicule part. But please don't put yourselves in positions where you think that you're going to win a confrontation with law enforcement. It's just not set up there. That's why we have court. That's why we have court. And if we're wrong, hey, you get a big check at the end of the day, but live to spend the check. Don't let your baby mama spend the check because you decided you want to fight with the police and have meth in your system or have a PCP bottle or something. Because this Noel Aguilar guy, even if his fiance, if she wins the lawsuit, he doesn't get to spend any of that money. And,
He's in a special place in heaven right now, so
okay,
he won't know.
Yeah. He's someplace other than here, and he won't be able to spend it. So it's just not a good look. It's just not a good idea. And if I have one public service announcement, that's it. It's comply now, complain later. Do you have anything you'd like to add as we wrap here, sir?
No, I don't.
I was really hoping we'd get some calls today. There'll probably be people typing on YouTube later as they watch and calling us all kind of names. Gil's not here today, though, so he won't be the victim of that. But I'll probably get the brunt of it, and so will you. So if you want to send us an idea
Sell out.
Sell out and worse, you can send us an email at rightalongradioshow@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at Right Along Radio Show, and you can follow us on Twitter at Right Along Radio. But we definitely want to hear an idea for some good show topics. And in fact, this show topic today that we're covering is a shout out to C. Moore from the Rollout chat room. This was actually her suggestion that we cover this today. And so we did. I hope it's to your satisfaction, ma'am. If not, I'll see you on Facebook. You can get at me about it then. All right, so we'll see you guys. It'll be next year. We haven't set the date yet, but we'll make sure to tweet that and Instagram it and Facebook it. Until then, you guys be safe and have a happy holiday, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas,
Merry
Kwanzaa,
Christmas.
Happy Hanukkah, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll see you guys next year.
Pointing at me?